We'll move on now to Kannapolis City Schools. Sid.
Good morning, everybody. Great to see you. It's a pleasure to be here. I want to thank the commissioners and also County Manager Group for their ongoing support. I'm joined this morning by Kim Greek. She's our Director of HR and Chief Finance Officer, and Dr. Chris Triolo, Assistant Superintendent who oversees academics. I'm Kevin Geary, Superintendent, very proud Superintendent of Kannapolis City Schools. We have here board and Miss Anita Parker, board member. So, is it okay if I stand out here? Good. Probably should have asked that before I jumped out here. But our Chief Director of Operations, Scott Rogers, wasn't able to join us this morning. He had a family trip planned, so he was out of town this weekend. At least that's what he told us. Go ahead. So KCS vision and mission, what guides our work. We are now in our fourth year, completing our fourth year with the current vision and mission statement also, which is part of our 2025 KCS strategic plan. And one of the things that we always share, a lot of you know this, but there'll be some of you will learn this today. Our vision's always easy. We tell all of our staff in the district as a kind of a clue to remember it, is we put the viz and vision. So valuing, inspiring, and supporting. So, but yeah, we're in our fourth year with that statement. Our pillars, so this really directs our work. We always say every decision we make, every dollar we spend, every resource we use, every strategy we employ goes into one of these four areas. Culture is pretty self-explanatory. Core instruction is really what we always do in education. It's teaching and learning. It's kind of the triangle component of teacher, student, and content. Support and interventions is everything that happens in the real world of education outside of just teacher, student, content. It's all the other support. It's our EC services, special education, academically and intellectually gifted services, school counseling, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's everything else. Multiple measures of success. While our North Star is certainly student growth in Kannapolis City Schools, we have to recognize, support, and celebrate successes in other areas. And Dr. Spalding talked about all the programs with RCCC and the partnerships with both Cabarrus County Schools and our district. That's but one way that we do that. There's so many ways. JROTC, there's a number of programs that, some that we've had for decades and some that are very new. So we're always trying to stay ahead of programmatic changes for our students to make them best positioned for success after high school. Mention our strategic plan. Like I say, we're in our fourth year of this. 24-25 school year will be the last year for this current iteration of the strategic plan. So I'll say in advance, I know we'll be calling on some of you to partner with us to give us insight, feedback, and contribute to our next iteration of this as we start to develop that over the next year. With our strategic plan, that is our roadmap. Over a 5-year period each year. We drill down a little further to our areas of focus, and these are really comprehensive. We really focus on, we embed what we call our academics big rocks in these areas of focus, and they're typically about 12 to 15 items, and we share these with our district. At the beginning of the school year, we do updates on how we're progressing with these, and we kind of do a final update as we close out the year on how we did with these. So, I've listed some of those here that are outside of the academics, and Dr. Triolo is going to talk about some of the academics areas in just a moment. But certainly this year, retention goes without saying. We did increase our local supplement. by 0.5% this year. That was an area of focus for us. Safety. Talk momentarily about some of the life safety areas that we addressed in our schools this year. We talk about some of our capital projects, beginning teacher support, communication, and a lot of that communication, to be more specific in that area, is geared toward reaching our multilingual language learners, which in our district now, it's about 17%. So, career and technical education, it's been an area of focus for us for a long time, specifically this year. Our goal that's kind of embedded in that is to increase our percentage of students number of students who are obtaining credentials to be able to go directly into workforce. And a lot of that is done in partnership with RCCC. With facilities and growth, we're starting to fill, certainly not to the scale that Cabarrus County Schools has been dealing with for the last couple decades, but we are starting to fill some of the growth within our district. We'll comment on that momentarily as well when we talk about some of our project needs. Enrollment, a couple things I'll point out here. First is a lot of A.L. Brown is, there's a lot of history there. And it's a cornerstone of our community, but this is the highest enrollment that A.L. Brown has ever had, as they are approaching 1,750 students. So that's increased greatly. We've grown over 100 students in the last 5 years, so significant growth there. We're in pretty good shape when we think about our facilities and space versus growth. Say pretty good shape. Could certainly be better, but A.L. Brown, a renovation and expansion is a project that we're working toward there that we'll talk about more so in April with our CIP needs. And also Jackson Park is probably going to be the next school that we look to do an expansion. And we do have Fred L. Wilson is currently our elementary school that is maxed out in terms of classroom space, and we do, thanks to the support of the county, we do have a project, an expansion project underway for Fred O. Wilson, which I'll again comment on in just a few minutes. Demographics, a couple numbers I'll point to here. Our Hispanic population is currently at 40%. We are growing at over 8% per year in our Hispanic population, so over the last couple of years. So, and these are as of last Monday. So, I mentioned multilingual language learners earlier. Currently at 17%. That number has grown quite a bit too. That number has grown almost 3% over the last 2 years. We've had a lot of newcomers come into our school district who are non-English speaking. And I mean, even this school year, we've had a tremendous influx. So those two numbers have definitely risen. Special education services, we are at 14%, about 14.1% of our students receive special education services. This will come into play more, particularly when we get into our actual budget request in April. But, one of the challenges that we have is that the state only funds up to 13% of a school district's EC population. So we always start in the hole in regards to funding, and that's a percent, so that ends up being about 40 to 50 students that we don't get additional weighted funding for, which equates to about $380,000 to $400,000 a year that we have to recover out of local funds because of that. There's a whole lot of things in work in the General Assembly. We hope there's some change there. So that's something to stay tuned on. Background on funding categories, really not much to highlight here. Just, obviously as we're standing in Cabarrus County, you can see that about 11% of our overall funding and that's not including capital. So when you add those together, a significant amount of our funding comes from Cabarrus County. You can kind of see the breakdown. Fund 8, local Fund 8, by the way, that's kind of a combination of a lot of different funding sources, scholarships, grants. A lot of those are money in, money out kind of deals, but they go into local fund, but they're not, from a government source, federal government, state government, county government. They're from a, typically a nonprofit or a different entity geared toward a specific cause or need. Within Cabarrus County, this is our breakdown. So the largest bucket is instructional services, as it is for Cabarrus County schools. You can kind of see how that shakes out. Last year, and obviously this is current, so this is for fiscal year 24. And last year we did receive a one-time instructional curriculum purchase fund of about $193,000, which was very impactful and very timely. So academics, I'll shift to Dr. Triolo, is going to talk about some of our highlights from the 23-24 school year, and also some of our big purchase items related to academics.
Good morning. So each year when it comes to our academic goals, we start with our we start with the pillars in our strategic plan. And then from there, we whittle it down to say, what is it that we want to achieve in each of our schools? When we set some very clear targets. So you'll see that we have goals around proficiency, student proficiency, growth. Ideally, we want to hit that high growth metric across all of our schools. When it comes to proficiency, what is a meaningful increase? So we've targeted 7% over the next 2 years, as measured by the BOC and EOC, which is really focused on reading, math, and science. Along with that, we have goals set to measure how our kids are doing, social emotionally, how are they doing with regard to behavior, and as well as goals, a new goal for us that we've had to add following the pandemic related to chronic absenteeism, a challenge that we're seeing across the state, across the nation. And so these are our goals that really drive our work. And so from those goals, we really lump them into some big rocks to say, all right, as a district, how are we going to focus our time and our effort? How are we going to focus our money? And so we have 4 big rocks aligned to rigorous and aligned instruction, data-driven problem solving, social emotional learning, and core behavior skill development. And then the latest is our parent and community engagement. How do we engage our parents and our community in a meaningful way to help impact each of these areas? For Big Rock 1, rigorous and aligned instruction, a big focus for us this year across the state has been the shift to the science of reading. And so our focus has been on curriculum development, developing skills in our teachers to respond to that research and to deliver a core curricular program that is aligned with the best resources in our teachers' hands. For Big Rock 2, it is about how do we respond to our data. We have a cycle of assessments from a partnership with Formative. We use common interim assessments every 5 to 6 weeks. We hold data meetings, and then we triage and we respond by planning out instruction that aligns to what our data is telling us. As well, we've started some leadership dashboards related to attendance, related to discipline, and related to our observation process. For Big Rock 3, a focus on core behavior, social emotional learning. We have a screener in place, a DESA, that we administer 3 times during the year. And then it's about professional development in response to that data. A big focus for us this year has been, we have Dean of Students positions that are in 2 of our highest needs elementary schools. Have really demonstrated and shown a great impact in helping support our teachers and our administrators in responding to the needs of our kids. And then parent and community engagement is an area we're growing in, but really focusing in on our communication tools, our communication platforms, our LMS, our learning management software, as well as different events happening at the schools and at the district level. The newest one is KCS Rises that we held a couple of weeks ago. just really focused on getting our parents more engaged in what we're doing and the opportunities that we have across the district. For our technology focus, we have a new outstanding director for technology in KCS that we stole from Cabarrus County Schools. Thank you very much. She's doing a great job. She's spending this year really growing in our understanding of where we're at as a district, strengthening our partnership, a very strong partnership with Cabarrus County, and this year focusing on a refresh of devices, teacher devices, in 2 of our elementary schools. Looking at our instructional tools that we use, the software that we use, looking at our safety and security package that we have across for our devices for students and for staff, but also as a district, and making sure that we are really making sure that we're responding to what our schools need, not just this year, but in the years to come.
So we shift to capital projects. I mentioned so we had smaller capital projects for this fiscal year, and life safety was a big component of that. We installed several vestibules, entrance vestibules in our schools to improve safety for visitors coming into the schools. Key fobbing or door fobbing, door access and fobbing was another highlight for this year. Kind of a variety of other projects. Typically every year, we talked about EC earlier, and we always want to prioritize our support of students receiving special needs services. I talked about, the funding at a local just for positions and covering the gap from the state. We also have to address almost annually needs, as we get new students in, and a lot of times classrooms have to be retrofitted, modified, restrooms added, showers, etc., to address those needs. So we had some expenditures in that area as well. Some building improvements, big focus this year. We're really happy to at 3 of our elementary schools to do most of the grade levels new furniture. It had been a while, so that was a priority this year. Then some miscellaneous projects as well. One of which is worth noting, though, is that's our KPAC, or Kannapolis Performing Arts Center. I want to note that because a lot of you are familiar with that facility, because it is certainly a community facility that groups, obviously within A.L. Brown in our district, but groups throughout, Cabarrus County and beyond use and rent that facility all the time. So it's made some improvements there. Large capital projects, our big one, like I said, is our expansion at Fred L. Wilson Elementary, which we're really excited about. We're right on target with where we need to be on our timeline for that. Our Board of Education just approved a construction manager at risk recently, so things are really taking off now for that project to kick into high gear. So. ESSER funds, it's hard to summarize fiscal year 24 without pointing to ESSER funds. Won't go through all those. 163 was ESSER 1 funds, 171 was ESSER 2, and 181 was ESSER 3. Those were the big waves of funds that we got in Kannapolis City Schools. I will say that we just had an ESSER review, a state monitoring review in January, and we did really, really well. It's good for 2 reasons. One, it lets us know that we made good decisions, our practices were sound in how we utilized the funds. And number 2, it was a great review for us as we come up on the eve now of the expiration of ESSER funds. It was a great review for us to be even more strategic and intentional as we close out the spending of those funds. I won't go through these, but you can kind of see this would be similar to what you would see in a lot of school districts in terms of how those funds were spent. Really comprehensive approach in how we utilize those.
Dr. Gary, what's the source of those ESSER funds, and where's the money coming from?
So that was the federal COVID relief money. So CARES Act and ARRA, American Recovery Relief Act, and finally an ESSER 3 was the final iteration of that. Just said another way, via chart. And this is, again, a breakdown of our expenditures. Again, like a lot of districts, some of that was put into personnel, professional development. A lot of that was put into summer programming, and just a variety of efforts. So, you good? We think we did a really good job. Rodney told us not to put recurring costs. You remember Rodney? He said that more than once. The positions, we think we did, jokingly, but that was a priority for us, was to not put a lot of recurring cost positions in ESSER. We put 10 over 4 years. We added 10 over 4 years, which is not atypical of addressing needs over a 4-year period anyway. So we think we did a really good job with it. We were good stewards in that regard. What's next as we close out fiscal year 24 over the next 5 months? A lot of planning and communication. We've been very intentional about, involving our stakeholders in our district as we make decisions. We are making some strategic decisions about some of the gaps that we're going to have in our local accounts based on, the expiration of ESSER. So, a lot of our strategy around that is to be very measured, very transparent in how we communicate, involve a lot of people in those decisions. So we've done some exercises, principals meetings, assistant principal groups, where we've looked at ways that we can save as we close out 24 and prep for fiscal year 25. Shared with our board, particularly in our February board meeting, and then just started throughout the district communicating those changes. We recently had a memo go out, just some effective immediately changes, some things that we're doing for savings regarding travel and meals, and just trying to hit some lower hanging fruit that will help us address that as we prep for the expiration of ESSER funds in September. External, so it's not all about internal communication. Certainly lobbying our legislators, to address areas and focus on areas that would be beneficial to not just us, but the Cabarrus County schools and others as well. So we developed our legislative priorities and looking to do some meetings and visits, like a lot of superintendents will be doing over the next couple months as we get ready for the short session. So I mentioned several of these already, steps, that we're taking. We'll really go through those, are just cost saving measures that we put in really over a 6-month period from January to the end of the school year, end of the fiscal year, to help us trend in the right direction. We have some changes that will be coming as we begin next fiscal year too. Kind of, go to a little bit different level in terms of some cost saving measures that we can take, but a lot of this again is just being measured in our approach. And, as we prepare and as we start to drill down and really focus on our actual requests that we'll bring to the Board of Commissioners in April, what are our themes? Won't read through those, but, certainly retaining people in as many positions as possible is a priority. Challenges for fiscal year 25. A lot of these will be kind of in buckets and categories, as we present in April, be more specific, but, rising operational costs and utility costs, not just utilities, but other operational costs is a big part of that. Vacancies and the cost incurred. One of the things we'll focus on in April is what it is costing us and other districts to do contract services for like EC teacher vacancies. Districts are paying above and beyond what it would cost if you had a teacher in that vacancy. So those are some examples, that again we'll focus on more specifically as we bring our request over the next couple months. And I mentioned the kind of overarching challenges with the expiration of ESSER funds, specifically to us. You can see some of those bullet points there that are more specific as we approach this strategically and look at not just fiscal year 25, but fiscal year 26 as well. But hope is certainly not lost. I think we're in a good position, and we, despite the expiration of those funds, we think we've been strategic in how we utilize those, and certainly knowing they were going to expire, moves that we have made, to prepare for that. So, these are some of the things that are positives, absolutely, and offsetting that. And, I mentioned one of those, and it's halfway down the list. It could have been at the top of the list. Is we do feel like, in the grand scheme of things, and when we look at overall expenditures related to the federal relief funds, we have a smaller percentage of that, which is reoccurring costs that we would want to sustain. So that's kind of the magic two-pronged question. Are they recurring? If you answer yes to that, do you want to sustain them? If you answer yes to both of those, then it's area of focus. But that's a shorter list for us. Any questions? Yeah, we did good. 902.
Mine's more of a comment. For the last 2 years, you guys have come in here and your presentations are very easy to understand. Basic wording, which I appreciate because we don't deal with a lot of things you guys do. And I appreciate the things that you asked for. Last year, you asked for desks that you've used for 20 years and fixed and then duct taped some more. And I appreciate the fact that what you ask for, you truly need. And I appreciate that you're also trying to look ahead to bring solutions to some of the issues we face instead of just turning a blind eye to it.
Thank you, Commissioner Warman.
I had a question about, is one of your items, of course, this is a lot of information in 30 minutes, and I appreciate that. You mentioned the supplements, that you had increased supplements over the last year. That has been a focus of this board over the last 10 years, is to try to get those levels up. And I've always felt a little uncomfortable about the difference and the impact on Kannapolis City Schools versus Cabarrus County Schools, because they use a different method. And I know that you've been working on that, but I guess my question is, how impactful is that to you guys when you're trying to recruit and retain? Because I hear from many sources that that's one of the biggest problems in public education today, is getting and retaining good teachers in the classroom.
I'll give you that's a great observation, and a quick synopsis is we do well in our region. Cabarrus does really well. We do well in our region, in our southwest region of 11 school districts. I mean, CMS is on an island in terms of supplement. They're, with Wake and some of the large urbans that are, just in a different kind of ballpark. But, Cabarrus County Schools is at 12%. Union County is, I believe, at 10.5. Mooresville's at 10. Mooresville gets city funding, which we do not. And we are at 9. So we're really competitive in our area, and we got to stay competitive. It does make a difference. We are ahead of some districts like Iredell, Statesville, Lincoln County Schools, Cleveland County Schools, Gaston County Schools, and that's something that should be acknowledged. And it can make a difference in a really hard, in a difficult market in terms of filling positions. It can make a difference. We always look at, just between us and Cabarrus County Schools, just to give you an example, on a $50,000 salary, just because it's easier math, a difference in a 3% supplement is $1,500 a year, paid twice, 2 installments of $750. And that can be significant, certainly significant for someone, in that salary range. So it certainly makes you more marketable. And you're competing against so many things, just across the board. And there's so fewer applicants in the pool. It's so much more shallow than it was decades ago, that every competitive advantage you can have, and local supplements is a huge one, in your region and your immediate area, is critical. So for Cabarrus County Schools and us, we need to continue to stand out and stay ahead in that area, because it's big, and people will tell you that. I'll give you one last quick note on that. We did a retention task force group, a whole big kind of group protocol and discussion that we did back in the fall to gain some insight. And we had 10 employees involved in that. We've since taken it now. It's at cabinet level, and we're trying to implement some of those recommendations. And, the number one item, after several weeks of meeting, the number one item for that group in retention was continuing to improve the local supplement. They by far had the most point value in that activity we did, which wasn't surprising. But it's really important to staff, and it's important to us as district leaders to be able to market ourselves accordingly.
Well, it's nice to know that so far we're on the same page on that, because that's what we've tried to do. I guess the other question is, we hear a lot of discussion, and of course, socioeconomic groups throughout Cabarrus County vary according to locations of schools, and Cabarrus County schools might be able to comment a bit on that as well. But we hear a lot of discussion about alternatives for folks, and I'm very much in favor of people being able to choose the path that they think is best for their family and their children. But we have a lot of families in Cabarrus County that don't have that leisure. There are families that maybe would want to choose a homeschool route, but they can't do it because both of the parents are working every day in a job, and they don't have the financial flexibility to do that. And so I guess my question is, how impactful is it to you guys because of the back and forth movement? If students decide they want, or families decide they want to leave the public school to go homeschool, charter school, private school, whatever the case may be, if they don't find that that's working for them, then they come back to the public schools. We've got to have a seat available, ready, waiting for them all the time. And so how much, and that if you're not prepared for the specific answer, I understand, but how impactful is that to you guys with that back and forth movement that you can't predict?
Yeah, it is impactful. It's not as significant for us. The biggest movement that we see is every year annually, we'll lose additional students to charter, not as many to homeschool. It's a very low percentage for us for homeschool, but we'll lose to, and I'm not talking about, a high number. I'm talking about very small percentage, but that has increased, and it's increased slightly since the pandemic. But we have had a lot come back. We've had, and we were looking at numbers a while back, and it was something like 20% of those students had come back or were attempting to come back within the first 2 months of the school year. So what I've tried to do as a superintendent, and Dr. Kapicki, I know, echoes this, because we were just on a panel the other day and we're talking about this, is to not get into the politics of, parents want, whether it's homeschool, charter, private, that choice is important. Our job is to be as competitive as we can be, provide programs, utilize our resources best, and that's, one of the benefits. I mean, you can slice this 100 different ways, but one of the clear benefits, if you position yourself correctly, utilize your resources in the right ways with programs, one of the clear benefits of public schools are the CTE programs, are the ROTC, I mean, the arts and and you may have a charter or a non-traditional public, a charter or whatever. It may specialize in an area, but we can offer that comprehensively. We can especially do that being a single high school district. So we have that luxury. Our job is to make it attractive, help parents understand what those programs are, and make sure they understand, if something is turning them off or something is, causing them to look elsewhere or consider others, that we put our best foot forward in, and, ensuring that, we can address whatever it is, that they stay with us. But, at the end of the day, it's all about branding yourself and ensuring that, you utilize what you have and market that. And Dr. Trella mentioned the KCS Rises event. I mean, that's exactly what that was that we did on February 8th. We did it for rising kindergartners, students moving from 5th grade to 6th grade, and students moving from 8th grade to 9th grade. So A.L. Brown hosted it, KMS hosted it, Kannapolis Middle School, and we had one elementary host it for the district. And it was all about, this is what we're about. These are the programs that we offer elementary level. This is a comprehensive approach that we can take. So we hope that you will remain with us as you transition up to the next grade level, because that is when some families will make a decision. They may be okay K-5, but then, as they move to 6, they may look at a charter, they may look at something else. Again, that's not a high percentage for us, but those are things that we know. So our job is to, I think my job is to not get mired in the politics of which one is better or any of that. That's a waste of time. Our job is to prepare and make sure that we execute our programs and take care of the students that we have so that it's more appealing for people to remain with us K-12.
And I think that's a very, very good answer. I mean, all of those things are great. And I think part of the purpose of my question was for the understanding of the public that the other alternative schools, if they've got 100 seats and they fill up those 100 seats, they say, sorry, we're full. We in public schools don't have that leisure. We have to make sure we have those seats available every single day, and we can never predict whether they're going to show up or not. But if they do, it's our duty, our responsibility, our legal requirement to have a seat available for them.
Yeah, and the only comment I would add to that, I agree, is that it's also our job, all the programs, the things I mentioned earlier, to stay ahead of growth as much as we can to make sure that we, like the expansion of Fred O. Wilson. Fred O. Wilson's a magnet school, but only about right at 10% of the students who are at Fred O. Wilson Elementary, where we're doing the expansion, are zoned for an elementary school somewhere else in Kannapolis. So because it's a magnet, that's not the reason. It adds to it, but that's not the primary reason or the only reason that we need to do an expansion there. It's the growth that's trickled into that area and the growth that's getting ready to come in a bigger way to that area of Kannapolis. So yeah, we have to be strategic in that sense as well, and staying ahead of and making sure that, that we do have seats and we have space. And I know that's a much bigger challenge in Cabarrus County schools, but it's all part of the equation.
And I guess my final comment would be that hopefully your crystal ball is clearer than sometimes our crystal ball is, because that's a big chunk of what we do, is trying to predict the future and read the crystal ball and see how accurate we're going to be. And I know it's a big part of what you're doing as well.
Well, thank you and appreciate the time this morning, and reach out with any needs that you all have. So.